Call the meeting to order on April 10, 2024, and we have Patrick Hurley via Zoom, and in person we have Carl King, Paul Tice, Mayor Buford Chase, Tom Bernier from Public Works, myself, and a few folks in the audience, including taping for public access. So with that, given that we need to start jumping into numbers, I think I'll ask Paul to start just by telling us about everything he's learned in the last week.
So, real quick, the group just got an email from Jennifer, so maybe she is going to, well, hopefully she is gonna jump on, but anyway, I will just,
Yeah.
I'll just jump in.
Did I see the counter up there jump from 2 to 3 in the lower right-hand corner?
I think it says 2 still.
Or is it still a 2?
It's a 2.
Okay, so she's not on yet then.
No.
All right, so Tom and I sat down for a couple of hours yesterday and sort of went through the budget, the water and sewer budget, line by line. I sort of got a better understanding of how they do projects and stuff like that. Unfortunately, with what I handed out, I did it in color. I didn't have time to do enough in color, so Tom made copies for us. So you're gonna have to, as we reference, I've got line numbers on the side.
Yeah.
So, so one thing, so this spreadsheet started out with what the group was given, which was the overall city spreadsheet. And then after, what I did is I added 2 columns. Who generates the number? And then what is in the number. I've got more filling out to do on what is in the number, but it's getting there. So the biggest takeaway in this is if you look at, well, there's a couple takeaways, but if you look at line number 1, sewer collection, everything in sewer collection is only Public Works staff, okay? Then if you go down to sewer plant, line 51, everything under sewer plant is Jason, who's the lead operator, and 3 additional technicians. Same goes for, if you flip forward to line 184, water treatment and pumping. That section is strictly Jason and the 3 field technicians. And then if you go to 206, that is water distribution, that is Public Works staffing. And Tom, if I mess something up,
Nope.
just
Nope. You're
okay. So on my, sorry, I'm getting my pages reoriented here. The copier flipped them on me. So on my copy, you'll see that the shaded stuff, the pink or whatever color that is, everything that's shaded is employee related. So, which is where some of my confusion came from, because if you look under sewer collection, you've got truck and equipment repairs twice. Well, line 4 truly is truck and equipment repairs. Line 12 is actually a portion of salaries. So, and then to add confusion even more, line 9 to 21 is all employee, employee salaries, benefits, and that stuff, the portion that they put in. But right in the middle of that is fuel. So, I have so many recommendations.
Let it out, man, let it out.
So some of that then is just organization in terms of how it's.
Well, yeah, so what, from me, the way I look at it, right? I'm gonna pick on a backhoe, okay? If I have a backhoe, I want to go to one line item and find out how much it costs me to maintain and repair that backhoe every year. I don't want to have to pull 3 different account numbers to find out what the total was that I put in. So it really goes, for me, now,
Is there a reason why we don't have a copy?
No, well, no,
I can share.
sorry.
That's very helpful.
I'm sorry.
yeah, I miscounted, sorry. I was one short. And somebody can have this color copy when I'm, after the meeting if they need it.
Just means I don't follow along, but that's okay.
Oh, here, I'll just make a copy. I'll make it. Keep going.
All right. Well, actually, here, I've got my computer. I've got it right in front of me. I don't need this. So that's where a lot of my confusion came in. And, I understand from talking with Tom that this format was developed years ago and people have been trying to massage it and make it work. But it invites, not that any budget every budget should be scrutinized, but this just exacerbates it, because, so the very last column on the right, city notes, the spreadsheet that we were sent, the group was sent, there was 2 columns that were hidden, and unless you opened them, expanded them, you couldn't see them. One was the general ledger codes, and the other one was notes that the city had put in. So I'm assuming probably Stacy or Jim. I'm gonna back up a little bit. So you will see in the who generates it column everything that Tom provides a number for, everything that Jim and now Stacy provide a number for. So I need to follow up with Jim and Stacy to find out what's in those numbers. Some of it is a little self-explanatory, because if you look over in the notes column, go to line 52, regular pay. They put a note in there that it is the employees at 80%. So 80% of the employees of the 4 is getting charged to sewer. And then if you went all the way down to line 185, you'll see the remaining 20% is charged to water. That's just those 4 guys.
I'm going to jump in and
Yeah.
ask a question. Is that based on those very detailed timesheets that everybody keeps? Stacy showed me the format for the timesheet.
So historically, we've on paper, budgeting wise, I mean, as I gave Paul that big spreadsheet I have, has their
Yeah,
salaries, so
we'll
we
get- yep.
know what they make every year. Historically, 80% of their time was at the wastewater plant, 20 at water. But in reality, that may get flipped or skewed a little bit because it's whatever they put on their timesheet.
So
You know, so
Tom,
they may spend a lot of time working on a project at the water plant in that season and be at 30%. But in reality, I mean, it's still covered under that spreadsheet as far as their 100% of their salaries. It's just, historically, that's how it was always percentage-wise, so we've just kind of budgeting-wise, we've left it that way.
so Tom gave this to me tonight, and I haven't even really looked at it.
I might have to
Noticed
explain it to you.
Yeah, but I will scan this and get it to everybody. Like I said, he handed it to me, I folded it and put it in the folder for right now.
Can I ask another question? So for the truck and equipment repairs line 12 that's buried in the pay section, is that because it's actually tracking some number of hours and attributing them to maintenance work on vehicles?
Mechanics work.
I see, okay.
And I know, Paul, you, not that that's probably where you were kind of going with it.
Yeah.
but You mentioned, you know, tracking a backhoe.
Right.
Hi, Jennifer.
I don't track it individually here, but I keep a spreadsheet on all my equipment as far
Right.
as major
Right.
repairs. But
But
that-
if you had, right, so you're doing what a single line item would do, basically, as a,
right, but
you know.
it's not spelled out in here.
Right.
I mean, that would be really confusing for the amount of
Yeah.
equipment we have. But
Because what you're trying to do here is allocate that equipment between the
All of
three
it.
departments, if you will,
Right.
water, sewer, and
Which-
public works.
you know, which, I don't want to get too far. This is something that probably the financial committee should delve into more, but than we should, because our task right now, I don't want to get too far away from our task. Our task right now is water and sewer rates, working with what we have. But going forward, I think the city really needs to look into setting up water and sewer using the gas format as enterprise funds. The public works would essentially maintain equipment, and then when, again with the backhoe, when the backhoe is used for water, it would be billed to water. So you got one entity maintaining the equipment, housing the equipment, and then what the water department would do is say, okay, we're doing this project, we're gonna need the backhoe for this many hours. And as part of that project, you would put in 100 hours of backhoe time.
You know,
It's
it's like a construction company.
Right, it's cleaner, it's cleaner, enterprise funds are cleaner accounting. And then you don't have to say, okay, public works work this many hours repairing a backhoe that's used 30% of the time for water and,
So actually, Laura, I'm going to ask that we let Paul try and get through kind of the overall thing before we start peppering the questions.
okay.
Absolutely.
So just make a note and we'll come back.
Yep. So you'll see, so what we're going to have to do, we have the numbers now.
Hey, Jennifer, did you see that we sent you a copy of the spreadsheet we're looking at?
No, but I'll look for it.
Okay, you should have an email that came in just 20 minutes ago or less.
So, and then we go down through, some of them are pretty self-explanatory. Utilities is just power. I feel strongly that water meters should all be under the water system to develop the water rate. I understand that somebody could argue that, well, you use the water meters to bill sewer, but when it comes to the value of your water system and everything else that goes along with it, they really are water equipment. So I think for our purposes, my first recommendation is going to be, as we develop a water and sewer rate, We put all the water meters into the water section of the budget, develop our water rate based off that, then develop the sewer rate based off. And then that way too, if say the council decides, you know what, we want the water meters in and we're gonna turn it into a project, it's already singled out in one place. You're not getting into splitting this project, you know. That would be one recommendation I have there. Let's see. Fuel, vehicles and equipment, communications, that is, Tom, could you tell them what the mission system is?
So you must be on,
Yeah, I'm down to 68.
you're on treatment plant, yep.
Yep.
So, treatment plant communications are gonna be high. So you're gonna look at the number and say it's kind of a high price, but, everything that water and wastewater utilizes in all our infrastructure is what we call our missions. It's a brand, so Missions Communications. It's a cellular service. So any major component, all our pump stations, the wastewater plant's got multiple ones throughout the facility. The water towers, everything has a missions control system on it, so it at a fingertip, you guys have it right on your phone. It alerts us to anything that's happening. So that communication cost is why it's quite high.
And is it divided between water and sewer evenly?
So it
There's
is,
some in, well,
yeah, if you go down, looking for the line number.
it's 198. And theirs is 7,900.
So it's pretty even,
Yeah.
okay. And one more question about that.
Sure.
Is there a portion of that that's also divvied over into Public Works, or is this just water and sewer?
No, we don't have any kind of
Okay.
mission systems.
Got it.
Those are crucial components, and that's why
That's
you need that.
just for the water and sewer systems. You know, it tells us the level of the water tower.
Yeah.
Whether it's a high, low level alarm, or, I mean, they can pretty much tell anything off the app on their phone, what's going on.
And without that, if something happened, it could be very expensive.
Well, typically, it used to be, we used to have audible alarms or lights, like pump stations. Years ago, you'd see a red light and an audible alarm going off, and then you were relying on a neighbor to call the police department and tell us we had a problem. Nowadays, everything's automated.
Right.
Yeah, before your time, we had one of those over at the marina when I
Oh,
was
yeah.
on the condo board. And we had a problem with it one winter, and it was probably 2 or 3 weeks before anybody noticed.
Oh, wow.
At the marina itself, the one that they
Yeah.
have? Yeah,
Yeah,
that's not ours.
yeah, no, it's not a city one, but it was that exact type of system.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
that's
So next into the next component is if you look at line 84 and line hang on, my finger's moving faster than my eyes, and line 233, the administration budgets, both in sewer and in water, those are 1/3 of Tom's salary, 5% of the city manager, and previously 5% of Becky's. So I forget her title, what her title was.
Yeah,
but
office administrator.
Yeah. So it was 1/3 Tom, 5% city manager, 5% Becky. So anything that's highlighted in the water administration that is a salary or benefits component, that's what that is made up of. And again, it got a little confusing because I'm in the water right now, so the 233 area, you know, you've got office supplies, communications mixed in with employee salaries and benefits stuff, you know. So you're paying out of the same series of general ledger accounts, which seems kind of odd to me. You know, you would typically generate a new series of accounts for anything that's a material-based item versus an employee-based item. You would have a different account series for both. So definitely, I mean, the meeting with Tom was very helpful to me. I have not gone through and I have not totaled up what is employee related and what is materials related. And then I've not started I have not moved the meters over to see what that does to the total, or to generate the new total water budget. But that is next. I just, like I said, I need to set up a time with Jim and Stacy, or Jim, but I need to understand where their numbers come from, because if you look in their notes column, there's not a lot of notes. There's some rather large numbers which I don't understand. I also want to know if, Tom, I think you said you believe it has been, but that whole prison meter thing, is that still in here somewhere, or has that been gotten rid of? That 180,000?
Was that in the audit? Did they take it out? I know Stacy had said that the auditors had said they should take it out. I don't know if it ever did. I never really looked at the audit, to be honest with you.
Because if that's still in
I
there,
have a
that's,
copy of the audit here.
Got a copy of the audit?
Yeah. I mean, it should be taken out anyway.
yeah, I mean, that's a losing, I mean,
They don't owe it to us.
right. Well, I mean, with 2 meters and Neptune doing the testing, that would be a hard-fought battle to even think of, you could get that back.
Well, if they thought they owed it to us, they would have paid us.
Yeah, yeah,
And the meter doesn't owe it.
right. Yeah. So as long as that's not in there, I feel comfortable saying that we soon will have enough information to start ciphering out what we believe the temporary rate should be.
Yeah, I don't know where it was in here. Stacy mentioned that to me when I was in there a week or 2 ago. She said that, the auditors pulled it out because it didn't exist.
see
And
it.
pointed out some of the reasons that it didn't exist in terms of
Right.
improvements the state made at the prison in terms of swapping out everything from toilets to shower heads to changing other practices
Yeah.
to reduce their water use.
Yeah. Yeah,
Because
before the audit came out, Stacy had said to me they were, they told them that we should pull it out, but I didn't know if they actually did.
Yeah.
Take it out.
I mean, it's
It's not income that we're gonna be receiving. So.
Right.
right. It's, I mean, if you look at what the proposed budget is to what it is, or the proposed income is compared to what it has historically been, it's lower. It's not that much lower, but it's 19% lower than what it was.
So I suspect that most of that is attributable to the fact that Tom and I backed out a significant portion of salary from the city operations budget that had been attributed previous years to water and sewer.
No, income side.
That's what I'm saying. So, the income number is just the bottom line expense number placed in the minus any other income. And then that's how you come up with the number that's called, this has been the problem for 10 years almost.
So you're not,
So that income number is not based on anything other than what we should be getting if we're spending this much money. And then they put that beside the previous year, even though it was, in most cases a 50% higher number, they made no effort to adjust the rate. So that's where the deficit came from every year that we're talking about. So that's on the income side, we don't have a good way to manage what we actually think we're doing for rates at the moment, because if you're basing them on last year, we don't know
Right.
what our rate adjustment is for this year, we just don't know what to put in there.
Because what you've got is you've got the audited for the fiscal year ending June 30th, 24, and then you've got whatever's been billed out for the first 3 quarters of 24, 25 to work with. And not knowing what the seasonal fluctuations are, it's hard to know how much the May 1 billing would reflect increased usage over the February 1 billing, for instance. You know, I mean, I don't know what the historical patterns are from quarter to
Right.
quarter.
So let me test this with you, Paul, because it seems to me that given the fact that we have a lag time, we don't have good information that's up to date because of the lag time, so we can't tell exactly what we've been making on the rate in the most recent increase we did, right? So in the absence of the ability to do that, my own assessment, I'm not an accountant, right, but I just assume the only way really to figure out our rate proposal for next year would be to take the most realistic assessment we have of what the expense will be, subtract out any other income, and say, okay, this amount, the difference is what we have to bill for, and then figure out the pattern by which we're gonna establish enough money to pay that expense, and raise the rates to whatever that is.
Yeah, I mean, for
And it's
right
gonna be
now,
a guess.
Right, I mean, because typically when you're doing your proposed budget, you look at your water sales, you look at your proposed budget, you, at that point, would develop a rate that would satisfy your budget,
Right,
and then put your budget forward.
right.
And
That's what has not been done.
right. So
So if I could just add one.
Yeah.
So I don't think we can guess right now the full, whatever the number is for all of next year. But I think we can get close, and then we can come back in September with new information and say either we leave it where we were, we guessed pretty well, or we go up or down a little bit based on the most recent information.
which, for that's why I put this on my question list for tonight. That's why this is so critical for us. We need to know what we're billing, what we're treating, and what we're producing for drinking water, what we're billing for drinking water,
Yeah.
and how much wastewater we're treating. We're going to need those 3 numbers, and I ran it back to the first quarter of 2022, so it should be enough to see a trend, if we're trending up or down, because we'll need to take that trend into account also, on looking at the rate.
Those are the numbers that you were asking for, Jennifer, am I right? Yeah, okay.
Yeah, so I sent this is the spreadsheet I dropped off the last meeting.
Yeah.
Yeah, Pam doesn't have a copy of it, but that's fine.
Can that be scanned, or I'll be back on Monday, so I can always pick it up?
Well, it doesn't have.
Well, it's not completed
It's
yet.
not filled in yet. So all it is the chart.
Right.
So the question is, how do we get it? How do we get those numbers?
I think I CC'd everybody, so I emailed Jason, and I haven't
Yes.
touched base with him, so Jason's the one I need to get some of that information.
Yeah.
Okay, so can we check with him tomorrow and see if we can just get that chart filled in? Because I agree, without that, we are truly flying blind.
Right, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and in terms of timing and frequency, both the state enabling statutes and our ordinances support the proposition that we're not limited to once-a-year adjustments. We can literally adjust every single quarter if we desire.
Right.
Yeah,
As needed.
You have a copy of this. You sent this already to Jason.
probably don't want to.
I haven't sent it.
You can.
Oh, I've got it.
You got it.
Ideally, no.
Yeah.
It is permissible if necessary.
So the other thing that I saw in the budget that I wanted to Whoops, I gotta switch over to expenses. Bear with me just a second, guys. I've got to scroll till I see it. Sick pay, repairs. There was oh, it was back at the sewer plant. This is a question for you, Tom. 77. Is the sewer plant actually getting billed for city water? Because
We budget for it.
there's $12,000 in there.
We've always budgeted for it. We're not so much as we used to. At least 20 years ago, we were probably one of the top 3 water users, but we changed a lot of processes through the year. I'm assuming they're accounting for it. Whether we're actually billing the city, that'd be a
Right, I mean,
question.
because when I saw that, it has the, sorry, the farmer in me's coming out. They reword my, it has the appearance of not, almost wanting to be an enterprise fund, but not quite being an enterprise fund, you know? I mean, you definitely want to meter the water going into the sewer treatment plant, because you don't necessarily need to bill it, but you at least need to know your totals are matching up,
That's part of
right?
the monitoring.
Right. So, but I mean, if you're running an enterprise fund, you could absolutely do that, right? So,
Well, I see what your question is. Are we billing?
Right, are we actually-
billing the water department for the water used at the wastewater?
Right.
That's a good question.
so I put that down as a Jim and Stacy question. As you'll see in that column, I have a lot of Jim and Stacy questions.
Do we have a sense of,
Oh, can I interrupt? I
Yeah.
do know that before, the breakdown that we got of the quarterly billing ended up with the wastewater plant. It was a line item that was in there. Whether they reimbursed between the two departments, I don't recall, but it at least was tracked for the gallon usage because we factored that in.
Okay.
And I would assume they're doing the same now.
Yeah.
well, I mean, ideally, from the point of view of water-only users, it probably ought to be billed so that it gets reflected in calculating the water rate side of things. Do we have a sense of how many people are water only in the city versus water and sewer? I'm assuming there are none that are sewer only.
That's a list of questions I'm getting ready to hand to Tom.
Oh,
I've got the list.
You do? Okay.
Yeah, it's very few that are only, and I think there might be at least 1 or 2 that are sewer only. But there are more that are water only because of the summer camps and the bluffs, the areas where the sewer plant can't,
yeah. Well, I mean,
Pump
the
the sewage.
whole lake road beyond Bogner is
It's
water
water
only.
only, yeah.
So there's quite a few
Yeah.
residences, 6 on my street alone.
Yeah.
yeah.
6 online?
And then, and then you have other locations where water is being used by people outside of the city of Newport too. There's a tap over by the church on Darling Hill Road.
Yeah, that church actually is not connected to the city by
No,
recently.
they actually have a well.
They have a well and they have their own
Yeah.
septic system, yeah.
Yeah.
In fact,
But the place beyond it that was used by Spades.
Yeah, the old Spades
now that
property
we-
does. Yeah.
Yeah, has a water tap, yeah.
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 Okay. So I don't know what Jim and Stacy's availability, or I guess it's probably just Jim. I mean,
Well, I'll be honest, I suspect what you're gonna hear when you go down there is, we don't know, to almost all of your questions. Because historically, recently at least, Becky's the one who was trying to track all of this, and she was just giving numbers to Jim and Stacy.
not Jim.
Tell me if you think I'm wrong about that.
No, I think historically it was always city manager's office that
That provided the number.
Right, so I mean, they've been covering for something they don't fully understand for a year, basically.
Stacy might have a little bit more answers for you than Jim, I think, as far as
Well, I mean-
the line item stuff, but yeah, historically, the city manager's office did this.
Yeah, okay. Well, maybe it's just a phone call then, or I can just swing in. I'll try to set up a meeting with him.
So I would just drop by. They're pretty available to people if you just drop in. And tomorrow they're open until noon. They close at noon on Fridays.
Okay.
Okay?
Yeah, it won't be tomorrow, but, and then, I mean, I'll take care of that.
Do you want to name your questions?
Yeah, so my questions that because we're going to, part of our proposal, I'm assuming we're going to need to decide if we want to propose a separate residential and commercial rate. So it would be nice to know how many residential we have, how many commercial we have. Tom, I didn't think of this yet when we met yesterday, but private water haulers, do you set up a place for them to fill? Do they meter? How do they do that?
So it's metered.
Yeah.
Years ago, they used to allow a couple different people that did pools. Blay, there was a guy Blay,
Okay.
Blay many years ago
Yeah.
did pools. You fill up a hydrant. We haven't done that in a long time.
Yeah.
So now we actually have a meter that hooks right to the hydrant and everything. If anybody wants water, like the state wholesale buys it from us when they wash bridges.
Okay.
'Cause they, for some reason, can't pull it out of the rivers to use it. So everything has to be filled at the wastewater plant.
Okay.
Jason tracks it and then gives it off to
Okay.
Stacy for billing.
So we should, is there a way to get that number? Because I'm thinking that should be
Oh,
part of the commercial.
Oh, I'm sure.
The commercial
I'm sure
number.
she has what was billed out.
Yeah.
I'm sure she could come up with that.
That was one of the other questions too, the station where like jetties will come in and dump off and stuff.
Yeah.
That's a code, right? They punch in so we know who's doing what?
Correct.
Do we have access to that as well?
Sure.
Because that's number 4, is basically how many do we see annually? How are they getting charged, and
Where's that money?
where's it going once they're charged?
It's by the gallon.
Yeah.
And there's only 2 septic haulers, which would be Juddy's and Taplins.
Taplin, yeah.
You know, occasionally we used to get a rare person come in, but for the most part. it's
This
just-
Hardigan's comes up into Orleans County. Do they come up once in a while?
I haven't been seeing them. I can't say that I'm at the plant every day, so that could be. Occasionally we'll get a rare one that comes in.
Because
Do RVs come to that station as well?
They do. That's I mean,
From the Proudy Beach, those,
we have an RV dump station that is free to the public.
Yeah.
We've had it for years. It's kind of a,
that you're
to
not.
me, I wouldn't, yeah. It costs more to put in a system to capture that with those people than it would be worth, honestly.
Chalk it up to tourism.
And
Yeah.
does the city dock pump out work the same way? I can't remember. It's been so long since I had a boat. I don't remember if I paid.
I don't know how they do that down there, to be honest with you.
I mean, it's pretty small. I mean, my boat had a 10-gallon tank.
We do have a pump out.
Yeah.
I don't know what they're charging down there, or how they set up the fees for the,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't get into running the facilities, but.
Yeah. So the haulers are, and I'm not gonna even pretend to be a wastewater guy, but I do know that what comes to you from some septic tanks
Oh,
is brutal.
Yes,
Um,
it is. Yes.
So
You know, the history on that septic receiving, our last upgrade back in 2007, the city got a grant, because it used to be they just dumped it on us.
yeah,
And it was the honor system. So they pull in with a 1,500 gallon truck, and he might tell you he's got 500 gallons on it, and he dumped it right, I mean, literally dumped it right on the headworks, and
Yeah.
it used to raise holy heck with the plant.
Yeah.
City got a $500,000 grant through the state of Vermont to put in that system, which was nice, because now it pumps it in at so many gallons a minute,
Right.
and it doesn't, affect the bugs in the plant.
Right.
But it still is a nuisance.
It's very taxing on a wastewater system, for sure. So if we could, basically it's the same for water and sewer, these questions, if we could figure out how many haulers we see on average a year,
Yep.
how much they're dumping, because then that helps us we can back that out of the total that the sewer treatment plant's doing and come up with an accurate total that the residents and the businesses need to pay for. And then so 5 and 6 are we still need, 5 being the Derby contract agreement, whatever it is, if we can get that.
Do you have that, Tom?
I do, actually, I scanned it, I didn't get a chance tonight to send it to everybody, but.
And then that.
The quarterly.
The quarterly, right, so
Oh,
we
yeah,
can
yeah.
develop a
Yep.
trend.
So is Derby's contract is both water and sewer?
No, just sewer.
Just sewer?
So the original agreement that I found was in 1980, where they hooked on to ran a line down to our facility. I haven't read through it again, but I was always under the impression that it's either 11 or 13% that they own
Right.
a share of the plant.
Yeah.
And that's my hang up right now, is that if they actually own part of the plant, or do they own a quantity?
Do they, yeah. that-
Right, because if it's worded that they own part of the plant, then they should be paying part of the
Part of the capital expense.
part of the capital
overhead
expense
for it.
of the plant. But if they only own an allocation, that's completely different, right?
Yeah, I know when the last time the J. Troy plant was expanded, the expansion was bonded by the towns, but 100% of the capacity generated by that expansion was allocated to 2 users, J. Peak and the company that is doing the subdivision behind the J Country Store, that little hillside. And they determined basically how much allocation that subdivision would want built out, and then J. Peak took the rest of it. And those 2 entities actually reimburse the system for the bond. They pay the bond, so the towns don't pay any of it. But they don't own any of the plant, they just own allocation.
Own allocation. And that's kind of what I'm hoping that our Derby contract says.
And the municipal attorney that was involved in writing all of that is the same one that was involved with Newport for years. So one would hope that it's the same.
fingers
that it's
crossed.
Okay, well, we'll know tomorrow, because Tom's got that.
Yeah.
Send it to us.
So,
I'll just interrupt for a
Yeah.
second. Rick and I had a meeting earlier, and I touched on that a little bit. It'd be interesting, and if you don't mind, I wouldn't mind looking back at that file where I found the sewer ordinance. Because you were given the 1984 one, and I knew when I saw that in the email, I'm like, geez, I know there's a newer one. I only had that version on my computer, but it wasn't dated because it was just in draft form. So it was in the city manager's office. But I'd be really curious to see if there was any notes left behind by John Ward, even especially back in those days, to see what the deal was with the Village of Derby. Because I
Yeah.
kind of vaguely remember him telling me something about when the septic receiving plant went in, whether he felt that the city might have to share with the revenue that was brought in by it. So
Yeah.
Before that septic plant, there was a deal where, when Taplin's was based in Derby, they had a dump station right there that was pretty unregulated. The only advantage it had over dumping at the plant, obviously, was that it got diluted by the time it got to the plant, but still.
Well, the real history of that, behind the original Taplin's, they did have a tank there. The village made a deal that everybody in the village that wasn't on the system got their tank pumped for free. And Taplin's would go back to his building at night, and he had a tank there tied into the sewer system, and dumped it back on us, and we weren't making any revenue on septics that was getting dumped on us. We forced them to pull that tank out and physically watched them yank it out of the ground.
Yeah.
So, do you have more, Paul, that you want to?
So, let me just do a quick scroll. I don't think I do, but one thing I feel that I want to point out is that I think it's important that the city and the residents, I didn't realize how much the Public Works Department does that doesn't get, that in other towns 100% would be put out to bid for contract and stuff. So we're pretty fortunate that these guys have the technical ability that they do. Budget aside, you know, what the city has as far as being able to install its own water mains, sewer mains. I mean, we should feel pretty fortunate. Now, that being said, I think it needs to be budgeted a lot better. So, I just want to throw that out there. Yep.
I don't disagree with anything you say,
Yep.
but I don't know whether or not we can get all that data and get it analyzed for a rate change
I know.
in the
3
time
weeks.
period. So I offer you this as a very simplistic thing. If you look at, for instance, sewer user rates for 22-23,
Can you give me a line number?
we budgeted that we were going to get, that's line 1. We budgeted that we were going to get $1.4 million in income, and we only got 988,000. So
Where
the
which one are you on in?
I'm on the city sewer and
The line number?
water budget, line 1.
One? Oh, really?
Oh, you're
On
on
the
the
income?
Yeah, you know.
Oh, she's on the
That shows the income side.
Okay.
She's on the income side.
Yeah, okay. So
You guys don't have
the
you guys gotta
budget,
go
we
back.
budgeted for about 1.5 million, and we brought in $1 million. We had a shortfall of about $500,000 for sewer. The next year, we budgeted for about the same amount, 1.5 million, and we brought in about 400,000. The budget for the 24-25, which we don't have the actual for, is the same as the budget basically for 22-23 and 23-24, approximately. I'll bet you that we are, since we haven't collected anything more, I think Jim once said we got 20,000 more for the first increase that we had.
I thought he said 120, but I could be wrong.
Okay, I thought he said 20, but at any rate, you can predict that we're going to be about, I would say, at 400,000 short. And the proposed budget for 25-26 is about the same as the budget was for all of those other 3 years. I'll bet you, if you bring in the same amount of money that you've been bringing in, that you're going to be about 400,000 short. That's rough.
Right.
And you can do the same thing for the water income. You can see that, I
Not to
think.
mention, you can go back 4 more years before that and do the same thing year over year as well.
Okay, and when we say that we have nothing to go on to establish how much of a shortage we've got, we do have historically how short we were.
Right, but what I'm saying we don't have anything to go on is we don't have usage numbers to go on. So you can't just say we're 400 short, so we need to know what the customers are used, we need to know what we're treating, we need to know what treating for clean water, we need to know what we're treating for sewer, and we need to know what we're billing for.
Yeah, I'm just saying that we we do know that we're going to need about 400,000 more than we've been collecting from, just for sewer. We're going to need that from somebody. And so I think we should think of that as the amount of money we want to collect and divide it as quickly and fairly as you can for this time. And then going forward, we need to do a better budget, obviously, and we need to do a lot of other things differently, and we need to charge various departments for the things that they are really using, and we need to watch out. You know, that prison stuff that you talked about, I cannot believe that the amount that they were paying was $40,000 per quarter 7 years ago, and they at the last time were paying $2,000 per quarter. So you may tell me that the meters are working perfectly, but no way did changing shower heads and changing this and cutting a department at the prison reduce their water usage to 1/20th of what it used to be. Because if that could happen, believe me, I change a lot of heads in my water system too, but it would never come down to 1/20th. But that aside, that's parenthetical. I'm just talking about how much money you need, and then by next week, figure out a fair way to sort of get a good estimate, as good as you can, for each component of the people that are commercial, that are residential, and we get a rate. And then we fine tune it for the next time because we have the time to do that. But you need $400,000.
I'm going to cut you there because Patrick's been trying to get a word in too. Go ahead, Patrick.
Thanks, Rick. I do agree with a bunch of what Ann is saying here. Sorry, it's gonna be hard for me to talk. If we know, that's just the sewer department deficit. That's $450,000, right? When you split that over 1,783 service end users, that's $250, right? That's $250 that you need to charge each sewer end user in addition this year, just to cover this year's deficit, shortfall. So if we do the same thing for the water, I don't know what the deficit is, I haven't looked at it, but it's probably pretty comparable.
No, it's a lot less, actually. It's a lot less.
Okay.
About half.
Okay, so we're talking, less than $500 per end user for this year to at least get out of the red. But it's not, like Ann said, it's not going to be just fair if we just slap a $500 surcharge in every end user without thinking about how to classify those. So I do think we need to just come to an agreement as to how we're going to classify those end users. We have metered and non-metered. We have commercial, we have residential. We have a city class that we have no idea how to quantify. That includes the parks and recreation, that includes the sewer using water, the sewer department using water department water, that includes landscaping, that includes, rec, whatever. So I think the first thing we need to do is just establish who these classes are. And then we can start talking about chunking that overall deficit out into these classes based on the rates. I agree that we're not going to fix the budget codes. We're not going to fix the aesthetics of the budget before we need to get some of these numbers just settled on. And the fact that John pointed out we can do adjustments quarterly if we want to, I don't think we're doing ourselves any favors by kind of delaying just like the crude back of the envelope math at the moment, and then revisiting this once Paul gets some more of those answers, and once we have a better idea of, hey, no bargaining, and once we have a better idea of whether there are costs that can be cut or whether there's Derby bills that should be sent and all those other miscellaneous unknowns.
So to a degree, I agree with you. But if we just arbitrarily we need 400,000 and we're gonna divvy it up, and then throughout the year, stuff gets charged to accounts that shouldn't be charged to it because water and sewer have more money now, we look like we didn't do our job. We have to dig into this budget. We can't just say 400,000, okay, 200 for everybody. We're fixed. We're all fixed. And then somebody in another department said, whoa, look at that money.
So-
it doesn't, so if we can go through and if it takes a week longer, I mean, we're so close to having the numbers we need, the Derby contract. I mean, I'm one person on the committee, so I mean, everybody else can say this is what we're sending to the council. That's fine, but I am not going to compromise my integrity to just put a number out there.
So, and I don't think there's any need for you to do that.
Yeah.
So we have 3 weeks,
Yeah.
which is more than it sounds.
Yeah.
Like we can hold a special council meeting the day before the end of the month to pull this off.
Yeah.
So I think we take the week and get the rest of the information that
Yeah.
Paul is asking for. For one thing, the major problem I have, Patrick and Ann, with the kind of the crude back of the envelope calculation, which I've been doing in my head now for months, right? And I come up with basically the same answer. The problem with doing it that way is that we're starting with an inequitable system on metered versus non-metered. And you can't just add to an inequitable system, which is why I think what we need to do is get the information Paul's looking for and not base it so much on what the last 5 years of deficits were and what we think they'll be again, even though I suspect it's close, right? Instead, I think we look at the water we're actually using, the cost of running the facility, water and sewer, right? The cost of running the full facility, and then say, what's the amount that needs to be made up by residential customers, and what's the amount that needs to be made up by commercial customers, and what's the fairest way to do the residential metered versus non-metered. Those are the calculations, it seems to me, that we need to come up with in 3 weeks. And then it's
But
absolutely...
haven't we already established that we can't answer that? We can only tell you how much the metered users are using and how much comes out of the pumps. We can't tell you how much transmission loss we have. We can't tell you how much the city's using. We can't tell you how much the unmetered people are using. So we're already lumping a ton of assumptions into this fair and equitable approach. So
We are, but I guess what I would say to that, Patrick, is that for the moment, in an inexact science, the truth is we're going to have to, any water lossage is going to have to be attributed to everybody because we don't have a better way to do it.
Right.
If we had all the meters in, we could be having that conversation,
Right.
but we don't.
And we can assume a standard water loss for the average U.S. water system is something like.
Did you tell us 14? 20?
Yeah, 14. We can assume that the
14%.
system has that water loss. We're not saying that. So what that does is that actually raises. If you assume you lost this much, it's actually going to bring up the rate because now people have to. So there's assumptions we can be made, and we can do some rough math real quick with that spreadsheet.
I think it's
How
reasonable.
does it, hold on, Rick. How does it bring up the rate? If you're making, say, 1 million gallons per day and you're losing 14%, and your customers are only using 86%, and you're billing most of those customers based on a metered usage, they're only getting charged for every single gallon that they use. Meanwhile, the city's expending that 1 million gallons per day. So the city's losing already.
Because what you're going to do is you're going to look at what you produced. In this step we're talking about, you're going to look at what you produced. You're going to take 14% off of it, and then your budget has to be made up of that 86%. You're billing for the 86% to cover everything.
It's the same principle as an electric utility.
Right.
With transmission losses, it gets factored into the
Yeah,
per
your
kilowatt
losses
rate
get
that they
factored
charge.
into the rate.
Jennifer?
We did that with the last rate. We ended up ballparking the amount of loss and just figured we had 14%, I believe we were higher. And we took our overall cost, divided it by, everybody got assigned a percentage of that 14% loss.
Right.
So everybody picked up their share of the 14%
Of the
loss.
loss.
What pulling the 14% out, and then if you pull the 14% out and you pull the metered out, that leaves you with what your unmetered people are using. And all that is a double check to make sure that you're treating your unmetered people fairly.
We did that. I want to tell you, there were 40 different categories of water and sewer counts when we did this back in 2016.
40 different, I guess I need,
They had water meter size, I have all of it. We had metered, non-metered, we had residential, non-residential, part-time.
yeah, so I already have recommendations for, the rates need to be simplified, very much so.
The rates technically are simplified in the sense that they all got lumped in. You're paying, everybody's paying the same amount, but some of those are treated somewhat differently, and there are fewer varieties of rates. We did eliminate all of the commercial and all of the industrial and lump that into one. Now, whether you want to pull that back out, unfortunately, some of the commercial is an office
Right.
that is not
Low
the same
usage,
as
low
Columbia
usage.
Forest products.
Right. But yeah, I mean, we'll worry about the rate when we get there. Let's figure out what we need to bill for.
I want to throw one more complicating factor in. And then I think we talk about the timeline and how we get to the answers we want in 3 weeks.
Yeah.
The last complication we have is the deficit spending that has created, the result of the deficit spending is the reality that we're living on a $2.8 million line of credit with no sinking fund reserves and no cash reserve. And so that I've spent my week working on that set of questions. And I think what we're going to have to land on is sometime in the next couple of months. It won't be decided between now and the 1st of May, but I suspect sometime in the next few months, we're going to have to land on an amount that we are going to charge water and sewer for past deficit spending so that we can pay down the cash reserve. When I had this conversation, Jennifer was there with me, when we had the conversation with the auditors yesterday morning, they pointed me to the line in the audit report on page 7 that's called due to other in the water and sewer report. And what that shows is the way that the bookkeeping has been done. It shows the cumulative amount that they, it's not an estimate, that they say water and sewer has spent more than it's taken in over, I don't even know what period of time, but it's a cumulative amount. And right now it comes in at $1.715 million.
As of June 30th, 24.
That's right. It could actually be somewhat more than that now. And I know, again, I think we're talking about a blunt instrument here. I'm well aware that there are all kinds of things that have taken place with how that number got created. But I don't know how, in the midst of a cash flow crisis, we're going to find out how to nuance that any more carefully. And the truth is that if we call it 1.8, or maybe with this year added onto it, it's going to be more like 2.1, whatever the number is, even if we charge water and sewer for that amount, that still doesn't actually address the full amount that we've deficit spent over the last number of years, if you count the fact that we weren't funding our sinking funds and doing all the rest of it, right? So I think we're going to end up with two separate problems. One is I think we're going to have to go to a bank, and you should know that I've asked this question at the Vermont Bond Bank, the Vermont Municipal Bond Bank. We cannot stabilize our cash through the bond bank because they only do capital expenditure. So the only way to do a loan that we can spread out over 15 years or thereabouts is to go to the commercial banking industry and see who's the most competitive. And so I think whatever we budget next year, we should estimate based on whatever that number is, roughly $2 million loan that we're going to have to arrange and then amortize it over 15 years and put a year of that into next year's budget when we set these rates. It's got to go on top of whatever else we're doing here, or else we're going to come right back in with another $200,000 shortfall.
So there's actually three pieces to that. One is getting current revenue and expenditures on an even keel. The second is building the sinking fund in, and the statutes say that you can build in up to 15%. It's calculated based on a formula, and then capped at 15% of what that formula is, which is basically the prior year's
Receipts.
operating and capital budget. And then the third component of that is going to be payments on the water and sewer portion of the loan obtained to offset the deficit to rebuild the city's cash position.
That's right. So I want to hold on for a second again. I just want to give it to the members of the task force. Are there any questions or thoughts or comments about that? And we'll ask others to chime in.
No, I mean, I don't know what John said. I mean, my intention was whatever we developed for a rate to get a balanced budget, we would then throw the 15% on top of that so that we could.
And use that 15% to fund either the loan that we have to take to cover previous deficit spending,
Right.
or the reestablishment of capital expenditure
capital
sinking funds, or
expenditures.
both.
Right.
That might be the cleanest way to do it. I actually hadn't thought about doing
Yeah,
that.
because
So how do
historically,
we make sure we avoid that fear that was expressed a minute ago about, other departments seeing surplus and tapping into that?
Right.
We trust the mayor and council to watch this for at least the next 2 years. I mean, no, honestly, let's be real. All of this at this point depends on people being adults in the room, right? And whatever we may want to do to try and control it, we've got plenty of people who are watching this very closely right now. And for the next couple of years, we're going to have to just work to get out of it.
Literally, all eyes are on us right now.
well, yeah, I mean, that's the only way it can be done as a practical matter. There is no other way to do it.
Except we had eyes on it before and we all saw how well that worked.
Well, I think that,
And we have to acknowledge that.
Nobody's been more powerful about trying to acknowledge that around this council table than I have been.
I agree.
I'm with you. And what I'm saying is, it's a different day. And so my analysis at this point is, we trust that for the next year at least, and probably 2 years at least, we've got a mayor and council who are watching closely, and we're very receptive to input from the community. And we do our level best to resolve it, and we're gonna have to come back and readjust all of this over the next couple of years anyway. Lori, do you wanna?
Yeah, this is just some general stuff from the whole of the conversation. So back to something Paul said very early on. For as long as I've known, Jim has always called water and sewer an enterprise fund. It apparently doesn't look like that on paper, but I have always understood from everything I've ever heard from Jim that you use the water, you pay for the water. You use the water, you pay for the water, that it is an enterprise fund. So now we're in a big mess, but that was what I.
so the way I've always treated enterprise funds is they have their own, water has its own line of budgeting, and you wouldn't have salaries from other departments in, so it's not truly an enterprise fund.
Right, but I'm just
Right.
sharing. with
Well,
you.
maybe let's be careful of our language, because actually, it's legally an enterprise fund. Whether or not it's been accounted or book kept appropriately is a different question.
Right.
Right.
But it is an enterprise fund by law.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Right.
So the other thing is that in our financial meeting on Friday, the representative from NEMRIC highly recommended that we look at the cost, what is it called? The chart of accounts that we use, that we have way more chart of accounts than we need. and that this may be a whole structure. I mean, obviously not for the next 3 weeks, but this is gonna be like a whole thing of bringing some of this stuff back into better alignment, to utilize how our accounting is being done, into a better method.
So the way that NIMRIC is talking to our accounting system, they need to streamline that?
No, what she's saying is NEMRIC is our accounting system.
Yeah.
And
Okay, so you're not just using it for the meter reading?
no,
No.
we're using it for
You're
everything.
using it for everything.
Yeah,
Got it.
and
Most municipalities.
what she's saying, what Cynthia Stoddard said to us was, look, as I just do a brief look at this, it looks fairly clear to me as if this has been kind of a hodgepodge that just keeps getting added onto and added onto and added onto, and it could do with a really good cleaning.
Yeah.
Both on the operating side and the enterprise fund side, right? And one other piece of that I think I'm taking very seriously is that NEMRIC can actually, we can contract with NEMRIC for a remote worker to actually help us redesign some of this stuff so that we're not trying to do it by ourselves from scratch.
Jennifer has had her hand up. For a
Oh,
while.
sorry, Jennifer, thank you. We'll come back.
Well, we're off the subject, so why don't you finish the subject and then we get.
Well, that's it for me for the moment. Go ahead, Ann.
Okay. One, the thought that you could use 15% of however much the proceeds are to pay back a loan on past money owed is not allowed. Part B, and I'll give you the copy of it, specifically says what the 15% can be used for, and it's for financing major rehabilitation in the future, major maintenance in the future, and costs of upgrading the water supply system. And there's comparable language in the other. And for the accumulation of funds to be used to match federal funds pursuant to something. You can't use it for a past loan.
Fair enough.
So you just have to
so
budget separately for that.
You set it aside for capital.
The 1.5 million that allegedly is owed by water and sewer to the general fund was never agreed to. There was never a water budget or a sewer budget in the past ever years that agreed that water and sewer owed this money. What happened was that the general fund and people who were involved in the general fund decided that some of the costs that should have been for the general fund, like 60% of the city manager's salary, would be attributed to water and sewerage. And only 40% remained in the general fund. And that happened for a period of maybe 12 or 13 years. And now when they looked back on it recently, they said, well, maybe it's only 5% of a city manager's time that's spent in water and sewerage, and the rest of it is spent in doing the normal job of a city manager, 95% for the general fund, when they only were charging the general fund 40%. So when they say in that long period of time that the water and sewer funds owe all of this money to the general fund, it's pure garbage. And if you added up 60% of the city manager's salary over a 13-year period, and then they did the same thing for 45% of the, whatever that person was called, the financial,
Becky.
But
Becky, 45% of hers was supposedly in water and sewerage. It was pure fiction, and we knew why it occurred because you can read the minutes and you can hear the actual tape of what occurred back when John Ward wanted some extra money for streets, and he couldn't get them. The city council wouldn't give him money for streets. So he charged all of that to water and sewerage, where there was a surplus at the time. And so money could easily come out of that and pay. And it didn't happen for just that year. It happened every year thereafter. So you've got at least $1.5 million of salaries that were overcharged to water and sewerage, at least. In fact, it could be that water and sewerage is owed money by the general fund. So if anybody decides that, the only question here is who's going to pay the loan? Do the citizens have to pick up, the citizens who pay for the general fund have to pick up the costs of this loan, which truly they owe since they got the benefit of all of that money coming from water and sewerage to pay over a 13-year period? The citizens are going to eat it. But it's only a question here of are the citizens going to eat it or are the ratepayers going to eat it? So where's it coming from? And just to be fair, it should be coming from the citizens and not from the ratepayers. I am both.
So
And I'm going
to ask you to, I got you, and this is a conversation that we've now had in public ad nauseum. So no, this is no longer news to anybody. Right. So I get it, and one of the things I would say, Ann, is that at the end of the day, I suspect both are going to have to end up having to eat some of this. Because even if we do a $2 million loan and attribute it to water and sewer, we haven't actually solved the entire problem, and we're still going to have to do something else. And one piece of advice I got this week is we shouldn't mix them. We shouldn't try and go get one loan and have part of it be paid back by an enterprise fund and part of it by the operating fund. We're likely talking about two separate things here that would be attributed. I'll just tell you, you and I are going to disagree on this one, I suspect, because I don't know any clean way to come up with a number, especially in a matter of months, to try and do the calculation you're talking about. So the only thing I think we have to go on is this cumulative total of what has been overspent by water and sewer. And what we do know is that for years, whether or not it was done appropriately, council presided over putting that budget in front, whether or not they approved it, they presided over putting that budget in front of the taxpayers, and then they didn't raise the rates. So however that amount got accounted, at least we start with an actual number. $1.715 million at the end of last year is an actual number we can document. There's a rationale underneath it. And I don't know how else you're going to create a rationale. How are you going to find it?
But it's false. You and I.
All of it's false. I'm admitting it. Of course it's false.
Well, then you can't charge water and sewer for it.
There's no objective way to go back and break it down.
Listen to what he said.
We have to find a new beginning point.
I'm sorry?
We have to find a new beginning point. We can't go off of that.
Yeah, the new beginning point is that water and sewer doesn't owe a dime to the general fund. No, I don't think so.
Yeah, I don't think that's true at all. I think water and sewer is, if you look at all the other factors that go into it, I think water and sewer owes at least $1 million. And beyond that, it's going to be almost impossible to figure out with any degree of certainty, no matter what number you pick out of the hat. If it's different than the number in this audit report, it's going to be a made-up number based on assumptions. Because I think
pick a different thing to tug on. If you pick the issue about losing the leachate, right? That was what, $185,000 a year? How many years ago? 6, and we did nothing to adjust the rates.
So there's
choose that and say, okay, there's $200 grand a year times 6. That's just shy of a $1.2 million deficit that the water and sewer budget created by not adjusting the rates. And the rest so it just depends on which strand you choose to tug on first.
Well, but if you start with $60,000 a year for Laura Dulgan's salary and $40,000
I hear your point. Please do not mistake that I do not hear your point. All I'm saying is, I suspect actually what we're talking about here is a deficit got created in a variety of ways that's going to add up to more than $2.5 million. And by the time you're done, if you look at 1.6 that's here, and another, and you say, okay, well, choose your number, 1.4, $1.5 million was salaries that shouldn't have been attributed, and another 1.2 was leachate money that never got responded to, the lack of which never got responded to, you're going to end up about where the overall deficit is. I'm just saying it's an imprecise science, and to suggest otherwise is we don't have the time right now to try and do the calculations you're talking about. That's my point.
Yeah. I mean, you could simply do the calculations. If a salary times 13 is not a hard number to come to.
And it's probably more than 13 years because it goes way back to the beginning of Newport City's disputes with the Village of Derby Center, and that goes back way more than 13 years. Because John, prior councils and so on, based on what I remember from the papers back then, were looking at the massive amounts of time they were spending on all of the disputes with Derby, and so they were shifting costs over to water and sewer because that's what the dispute was about.
I don't know how we can take responsibility
And
for
you
13
can't.
years of council choices to allow that what I truly believe was an inappropriate move to take
Yeah.
place. Okay? I don't know how we can fix that. Whether or not the council approved the water and sewer budget all those years, and I agree with you that they should have, it doesn't matter, Ian, because they did approve an operating budget that inappropriately attributed that amount that went out of operating and over to the other side. So somebody was looking at these numbers and doing it anyway. And I don't know how we go back and recalculate year by year by year to make up for decisions that they probably made thinking they were doing the best thing they could for the city or whatever. I don't know what they're
The
doing.
bottom line is the citizens got ripped off. We're gonna have to fix it.
We're gonna have to fix it. That's
So-
exactly right.
We got a little
Do we fix it
acknowledgement.
out of water and sewer, or do we fix it out?
As you say, at the end of the day, it's a little bit of a moot point. Who cares? It's all gonna be the same. It's gonna hit.
It's gonna come from both in reality,
That's right.
because
It's gonna be
Rick's
both.
point is well taken. It's considerably more than the 1.715 objective number. And if you go away from that objective number, it's anybody's guess. And, you know, in terms of councils approving water and sewer budget, I don't think in the whole 45, 46 years I've been back here, the council's ever approved a water and sewer budget.
Until last year.
And that means that they never even looked at it. They didn't act as water and sewer commissioners and decide that
Right.
it was accurate.
We agree.
They didn't watch what was
Yeah,
being charged them.
we can all agree that there's water over the dam at this point. Our purpose is to try to fix this going forward, not
Try to meter
to
that
beat the
water.
past to death.
And when we
I'd
go,
like to make a point.
Go ahead.
We're basing the percentage, so this current next budget with Becky's salary and her city manager's salary, we base it at 5%.
10% each divided between water and sewer.
Right, 5% each.
Yeah.
What was that based on?
It was based, honestly, it was based on a wild ass guess.
Okay,
Because we
so-
didn't have either of those positions filled when we did this, the
So
study.
whether or not the percentage, maybe the percentages were too high. Not gonna dispute that, but I know they were tracking all our time for that period of time. And you think about our last major city manager left June 1st of 2023. I think you're gonna find down the road that percentage, and I can say it for sure with Becky, is definitely, that position was higher, is gonna be higher than what we're projecting it is. That's all I'm gonna say.
So I'll just say, I don't disagree, certainly that over the years, Becky's position was doing an awful lot of grunt work that included work for water and sewer.
I mean,
And we don't have a good way, because we didn't have anybody in the position this year to track that.
But you think about what my budget, my salary's split between three major departments. And Becky did a lot
I agree.
for me. And it was probably the lion's share of all the departments.
That's really what I mean. I mean, at the end of the day, and it's, what I want to say is, there's, if you abandon the only number we have that's solid, which is in this book, then what, and it's anybody's opinion about where we set our rate from, set our amount that we owe from there.
But that audit is based on the numbers provided by Jim and Stacy.
Of course it is.
And that it was based on the numbers established by some of the department heads. And if that was a fiction to begin with, then that audit is a fiction with regard to that
No, so let's be
number.
careful. Let's be careful here, okay? This is the closest thing we have to a reliable telling of where the city is financially. It's an independent audit of our city's finances. Now, whether or not we agree with the presuppositions that went into creating it is an open question, and I'm not disagreeing, but I don't want to imply to you or anyone else in this community that we don't have reliable numbers about the city's condition. We do. And this document is the closest thing we have to what that looks like.
Well, and we know exactly what cash went out of the city because they test the audit numbers against bank
That's right.
statements and everything else.
Right.
We know that the numbers in the audit in terms of what money went out and what money came in are accurate. The only real issue is whether the budgeting assumptions in terms of
The internal assumptions.
the internal assumptions are accurate, but the bottom line, big picture is there, and that's the only objective number we have. And if we deviate from that objective number, all we're doing is compounding the problem.
I'm not saying it's fair.
I'm not saying that it's objective, the number that's in there for water and sewage. I'm
But
saying.
the math
I
is
hear you. So
objective.
listen, I'm gonna call it because it's 8 o'clock, and what we don't have that I really need tonight is a quick conversation about the timeline and what we need to do on a timeline to get us to our answer by the end of April, right?
Well, we have 2 more Thursdays before the last Monday of the month.
Yeah.
Next week, week after. I'd like to start at 7:30 rather than 6:30 because I have a schedule conflict, and that'll give me 15 minutes to get from one place to the other.
Great.
Is for next week, I'm not sure I'm gonna be here. I don't know if there's another night we can meet.
I can look.
If we could meet Wednesday night.
I can't, I have a DRB meeting next Wednesday.
There isn't a council meeting on Monday. That leaves an open night.
Yeah, God forbid we not fill our Monday nights.
Well, let's see, today is the 10th, right? So, yeah, Monday night would be the 14th.
Doesn't give us much time in
No,
between to gather.
I need at least a Tuesday.
Tuesday, can we do Tuesday night? Patrick, would Tuesday work for you next week?
Yep.
Jennifer?
Yes.
I can do Tuesday.
I can also.
I can,
There,
if you can
there's
get me numbers, we can.
There's a planning commission meeting Tuesday night, so,
You don't have to be there anymore.
no, but you have to figure out,
We'll find a place to meet.
well, yeah.
I see what you're
Logistics.
saying.
I may boot the planning commission so that we can have a hybrid if we need. Can you all be here Tuesday night
Yeah.
in person, so we
Yeah.
don't have to worry about hybrid?
Yep,
All right, then
Yeah.
we'll find a place to meet.
Time will start.
6:30.
6:30. Yep.
Okay, so,
Yes.
Okay.
Well, over this interim, I would like to run a few scenarios for different rate increases. Ignoring all of these other uncertainties, I can't help but need to put some numbers down to see where it gets us for these rate adjustments. And then we can chew on them based on whatever information comes back in the interim. But what I need is a better understanding of where all the hidden information is for these different rates. So like right now, all that I've gotten from this documentation is 1,793 billed end users. But where do I find, how many connected residentials, above ground seasonals, connected industrial commercials, connected outside city boundaries? Where are those numbers hidden?
Stacy has them.
Right, and that's part of the questions that I gave Tom.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we should have the answers to those
are what we
questions.
based everything on before.
And we don't have those yet. We gotta get those from state.
Correct.
Yeah, this should be the cover of every single quarterly billing. Will say what the categories are.
Okay.
And there are a few less categories than there used to be.
All right, so is that something, Paul, that you're gonna get from Stacy, or should I follow up with her?
I think Tom's gonna get it for us.
Yep.
Okay.
So Tom, you'll start that conversation first thing tomorrow morning. And let's say by Monday morning, we hope to have that, okay?
The one thing you're gonna run into, which we ran into before, your potable water and your wastewater, they are done, the figures are monthly. However, our billing cycle is not in the middle of the month.
Yeah.
So you've got an incredible crossover where you do not have any agreement.
Right.
And just to address the whole thing with the deficit, what is owed between the funds. Years ago, water and sewer contributed to the general fund. And also they ended up, if you want to go back and forth, there's a whole lot of things where I think the figure that we're using right now is trackable back to, the beginning practically. And it has been recorded in all of the audits through the years.
Okay, but this interim, this first adjustment is not trying to deal with the historical deficit. This is just this current fiscal year.
That's right, that's all you're worried about. Yep.
And that, when Jason fills out, hopefully Jason can get that spreadsheet done. That spreadsheet, the one I handed out the last meeting,
Yeah.
that will be huge. That will bridge that gap, Jennifer, between what you're talking about and what's metered, the quarterly versus the monthly.
I didn't see that spreadsheet,
Yeah.
so just,
Yeah, I can send it to you. That's right, you weren't here last week. Yep.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, okay, gotcha. Yeah,
Okay.
I will forward that to you.
All right, so
Thank you.
we'll meet again Tuesday night.
Yep.
And then we'll figure out the next step, and we'll plan on going right up against the end of the month window and planning a special meeting for council toward the end of the month for just the purpose of looking at rates for water and sewer.
You were mentioning something and then went to Jennifer, something about someone had offered assistance.
NEMRIC is willing, we can contract with NEMRIC to help us redo financials, how we do our financial record keeping.
Okay, you never get finished with that.
But my suggestion at this point is, we're focused like a laser on the rate change between now and the end of the month, and then we've got time to breathe a little bit, and we start looking at how the accounting should be cleaned up and what the new booking, what the system should look like.
And NEMRIC is really a financial committee, big picture issue. It's broader than water and sewer.
It is,
Yeah.
for sure. And they are definitely talking about it.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm really grateful to you all, thank you.
Yep.
And we'll see you Tuesday night at 6:30.
Sounds good.
Great, thanks.
Did you guys hear
Good night, Jen.
the executive
Night, Patrick.
order
Hope you feel
Trump just
better.
put out?
Right.
Put an executive order out against low pressure shower heads. He was sick of getting in the shower and having water dribbled on him.
Who?
Donald Trump. He wrote an executive order for low pressure.
I think I'm gonna call it.
No, I just can't believe that.